Welcome. My name is Maryann Lombardi, and I am the Associate Director for the Creative Affairs Office here in Washington, D.C. Welcome to the Care for Creatives Community Conversation Series on mental health. So Care for Creatives is a partnership between the DC Creative Affairs Office and the George Washington University, which provides pay-what-you-can mental health support to any creative and entrepreneur in the DC area who needs it. You can find more information about Care for Creatives and how to receive care on our website at creativeaffairsdc.com. So thank you so much for joining us here. I'm really excited to introduce you to Dr. Vikki Johnson, who is an author, a coach, a speaker, a pastor, an entrepreneur, a radio show host, a community builder. I don't know, Dr. Vikki. It seems like you're doing almost everything, and I'm so excited for you to share with us a little bit about how community impacts our mental health. So welcome.
Thank you, Maryann. I am so excited to be part of this campaign to support creatives and to talk about how community is a necessity, really, as it relates to our mental health, our emotional wellness, and our physical well-being. You know, for me, isolation is dangerous. You know, when I was growing up as a little girl, my grandmother would say, idle time is the devil's workshop, right? Just kind of meaning, if you have nothing to do, then you're not really tapping into your imagination, or you're not being fruitful, or you're not being productive, is what I evolved into, that being my interpretation of that, what I'll call elder sage wisdom. But community is crucial because we get to reflect and project to other creatives our art, our gift, our talent. And that is really what lights us up in the creative community. It is why we are here. It is what gives us life. It gives us energy. It gives us fuel. You know, I'll use a specific example. It is why the planner or journaling community really boomed during the pandemic, especially last year. And adult coloring books is another example of what I'm saying. So when we are able to tap into our creativity, it really is a soul or emotion nurturing activity that fuels us really from moment to moment.
You mentioned isolation, and a component of that is loneliness, and loneliness really is an epidemic. And I was reading this study recently that was talking about how 61% of Americans are lonely, right? And that's up from 54% last year. And it seems like it's just growing, right? Like this sense of loneliness is growing. And I'm wondering how you address that and approach that with the women that you coach.
I encourage connection. You know, that is for me a really quick medicinal response. You know, connection reflects back to us who we are. And I do that, whether that's online connection, FaceTiming, picking up the phone and having a conversation, understanding that sometimes we don't want to talk, we don't want to use our words audibly. So texting one another. You know, I host a monthly online gathering for my community for that very reason, because some of the women that I serve are single and live alone. Some of them, have children, small children in the home as single mothers. And so that connection is really powerful. And in my case, when women come together in a space of community, just holding space, just our presence for one another is healing. And so isolation can be dangerous because it also leads to suppression of our emotions, which leads to depression, which we want to avoid. I also encourage, as an interruption to isolation, is simply during the day, if you're able to, go outside and just look up at the sun and get some of that free vitamin D, and just let the sun kiss you, because it activates in us some chemicals biologically that lift us emotionally, it gives us mental clarity, and it will energize you physically. Another remedy for isolation is to move your body. Get in your body, because isolation can lead to numbing out or just turning off your feelings. So we kind of sleep it away. It's the behavior where you go get in the bed and put a pillow over your head, just to block out everything and everyone. So there are different options, and I utilize all of them, understanding that we're not monolithic in our appetites, in what inspires us and what encourages us. So I like to kind of have a smorgasbord, if you will, of options that people can choose from.
All those sound wonderful. So I know you have mentioned this concept of your destiny being greater than your circumstances.
Yeah.
And I'd love for you to unpack that a little bit more for us about how important it is having a vision for your destiny and how that impacts how you feel, and then how you feel can be attractive to other communities and how other people feel too.
Sure. Well, two things. Well, I'm also a chaplain, so my practice of faith is rooted in the Bible. That does not mean I don't have an awareness of other practices of faith, because I do. So in Christianity, there are two scriptures that come to mind. One is hope deferred makes the heart sick. If you don't have hope, it literally makes your heart sick. It begins to suppress your nervous system. It begins to take away your appetite. And if you don't have an appetite, you don't have any nutrients to fuel your body, to move, to do certain things. The other scripture I want to reference is without a vision, you'll perish. If you don't have an idea, if you don't activate your imagination, if you don't stimulate your imagination, then you just kind of live at the mercy or by default of whatever is happening in the world. I believe, Maryann, that we live at choice in every moment. So if you don't like where you are, if you don't like how you are feeling, barring something really intense that needs additional support like therapy or counseling, you get to choose what's next. So if you don't like what is happening now, make a different choice about what comes next. So when you begin developing your vision, it gives you a blueprint, gives you a roadmap for what to do next. And sometimes you can overplan what's next. So the opposite of that is to just try living in stillness, not isolation, in solitude. Just allowing yourself to exhale in the moment and be still so that you can recover some energy, some excitement, some vision, some motivation, some inspiration. And as creatives, it's easy to think that you have to be on all the time, and you do not. It is critical to put in recovery time and restoration time, because if you continue to give from a depleted place or from an empty cup, eventually you'll become resentful of not just people pulling on your gift, but you'll become resentful of the gift. And if you think about it, there are a lot of creatives who do deal with depression. There, as a creative myself, I understand, we have really high highs and really low lows. When it's good, it's great. When it's not going so well, it can be very, very difficult, which is why I so love and appreciate this campaign that you're offering, this care for creatives, because it is so imperative. And without art, without music, without creativity, where would the world be? We would be lost. Art, music, creativity is a universal language, regardless of what language you understand and speak. The arts is a universal medicine, is what I want to call it, for the soul, because it keeps us inspired and it keeps us motivated.
Yeah, I like that universal medicine for the soul, right? Like I think that's really beautiful, and it sounds like a lot of that work of stillness, not isolation, but stillness, allows you an opportunity to learn more about yourself, right?
It does.
And in learning more about yourself, there's strength in that. It sounds like, right? Like strength for your body and for your mind. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about how that strength of self can then help you be able to help others in the community, right? Like the connection between the power and the strength of self and the power and strength of the community.
It helps us because it connects us to what we love. And it's difficult to do what you love without being someone you love. That's why I think it's so important to have self-awareness. Am I doing this because this is what I want to do authentically? Is this what I feel I'm really called to do, who I am called to be? So when you tap into that place of authenticity, the doing happens automatically. When you get to that space where you can be someone you love, inevitably you're going to do things you love. And for creatives, that means you're going to create more beauty, first for your own fulfillment, and then for others to enjoy, which then in return pays us back with a sense of fulfillment and significance. And that is what repeats. When you can do what you love for you first, right? It's easy to offer that to the world, and you're not doing it for the result. But when you get the appreciation in return, it gives you strength to go on just another day. So it's about taking the time to explore. And these moments happen in seasons. What I enjoyed doing maybe 10 years ago might not be the same thing that's going to carry me forward into the next decade of my life. So that self-examination and introspection. And again, I go back to stillness, because in stillness is where we find our center to get that clarity about what's next. And I often talk about what's next. I've said that a few times because what's next is easier to process than the bigger picture at times, particularly during times of crisis and during times of chaos and during times of upheaval like we have experienced over the last 18 months or so. So what's next makes life manageable when it feels like it's totally out of control, which for many people, they have felt the result and the residual, I'll say, negativity of the chaos that has been in the world. How do you create beauty out of chaos unless you become still first, reset, sometimes reposition, and then move forward?
Yeah, that day-to-day work is so vital, right? Because it brings it back to what can you control and what can't you control,
Right.
right? And so sometimes the steps along the way are things that you can control. You can control getting up, calling your friends, doing your work, planning for the next day or the next week. And especially, when things are so unknowable,
Yeah.
harder to plan for what that mass future is. You mentioned it briefly, but what role does spirituality play in not only knowing ourselves better, but also building community?
Well, spirituality is the evolution of self. That's what the path is of spirituality. It is evolving, it is expanding, it is experiencing moments that cause us to become our highest, greatest self. For me, that is Christianity. For someone else, it might be Buddhism. For someone else, it might be Catholicism or Judaism. And that is important because our divinity is directly connected to our creativity. There's a direct correlation between that. And when we are creating is when we feel most divine. And that divinity then becomes a magnet to draw people in, to draw like-minded people into a space that you can create as sacred. It's sacred because you say it's sacred. It doesn't have to be blessed by a priest or, a pastor or a chaplain. Sacred is what you say it is. And when you understand that your relationship with God, with a higher power, with source, whatever you call that, then once you begin to have an awareness of it, you can incorporate it into who you are and then share that out into the world, and make an impact on one person first and then the masses.
That's beautiful. As we leave this conversation, if there was one thing that people could do right after watching this, or that could help build their community, help care for their community, what's the one thing that they could do?
Practice radical self-love, because you can't give away what you don't have. And so that your well is one that is overflowing. It is from your overflow that you're able to serve others. I get asked often, and you alluded to it in the beginning when you were introducing me, just kind of listing all of the many things that I do. Like, Vikki, how do you do all of that? And it's because I practice radical self-love. As the flight attendants say on any plane, hey, put on your mask first before trying to assist someone else. And so I offer to those creatives who are watching, put on your mask first, always, before trying to assist others. And when you need a moment, when you need a break, take it unapologetically so that you can reset and then come back out into the world as the best version of who you are. So practicing radical self-love is the one thing that I offer for you to take away from this conversation today.
Well, I got to tell you, I feel better already. So, I'm going to take that note and leave here and do my part to practice radical self-love. And let's hope that others who watch will do the same. And I thank you so much, Dr. Vikki, for hanging out with us and sharing some of your knowledge and gifts.
Thank you, Maryann, for the opportunity. It was my privilege to serve the creatives of the District of Columbia in this way. Thank you.
Thank you so much.